We're live. Hey, everybody, this is Alex, and we got Herman with us. We're about to get started in just a little bit, in maybe like 10 minutes. So sit back, relax. If you have a bottle of Dad's hats, or if you have a hat, put on your hat and get comfortable. If you have any questions, of course, leave the questions on the side. But we will get started in just a little bit. So everybody sit back and relax. I'm going to go ahead and play this video while people are just kind of, maybe just joining us and whatnot. People can just watch it. A few other videos in your Dad's Hat YouTube channel. All right, we got a few people joining here already. Everybody just sit back, relax, watch your video. Herman, you can hear that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, this is amazing video.
My dad owned a neighborhood tavern, just like this one, back in the small town in western Pennsylvania, where I grew up. He was a stickler for detail and doing things right, and he nearly always wore a hat, real hats, the kind you only see in old pictures or movies these days. For him, they were more than a fashion statement. His hats were a symbol of the optimism and style of that era. They showed that he cared about quality, polish, and finish from an age when taking the time to do things the right way mattered. We make Dad's Hat Rye right here in a restored textile mill in Bristol because we too want to do it the right way. To take up a tradition and make something that matters by hand, small batches, using only natural, local ingredients and the most careful methods. We make Dad's Hat in honor of that wonderful, optimistic time in America's history when we made a lot of things and took care to make them well. My heart tells me that many of us are searching for that spirit again. And Bucks County is the perfect place to recapture that spirit. People here appreciate craft, history, and tradition.
If you're just joining us, welcome. Sit back, relax. We're going to get started in just a few moments. And what you're seeing here is a promo video for Dad's Hat in the Bucks County area.
I kept those hats. I still wear them. And you know what? They fit perfectly. My name is Herman Mihalich, and Bucks County is my home.
So Herman, you're telling me the guy who made this video is a National Geographic videographer.
He's a videographer for National Geographic. He's a very talented guy.
Anymore. Craft
we were very lucky to have him do that video for us.
Especially at our friend's Dad's Hat Rye in PA.
I'm just playing through videos on your YouTube here. So.
Even the bottles are from PA.
Hi, I'm John Cooper. Welcome to Dad's Hat Pennsylvania Rye Whiskey Distillery. So Herman and I have been friends since back in the 70s when we first met at the University of Pennsylvania. We were actually fraternity brothers. One of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to bring back classic pre-prohibition Pennsylvania style rye.
The rye whiskey is really part of my DNA. My grandfather was drinking rye whiskey in the teens. He's serving it in the speakeasy and then the bar that he started in the 20s.
Dad's Hat was the first fully licensed, fully functioning distillery in the state of Pennsylvania that produced rye whiskey since Michter's closed in 1989, and we started production on site here in September of 2011.
We chose Dad's Hat Rye Whiskey as a way to communicate the nostalgia we associate with our brand.
What we wanted to do is we wanted to make every single drop of our own whiskey on site, and we wanted to be true farm to bottle. We did that. We grind our grain here on site. We ferment and distill our whiskey here on site, and we actually age our whiskey here on site in our own barrels.
We work with primarily with a farm in Bucks County called Meadowbrook Farms. So this is our freshly harvested Pennsylvania rye grain. The quality of our raw materials we think translates directly to with the quality of our whiskey.
We do everything from scratch. And for us, that really is the true definition of what a craft spirit is and what a crafted spirit should be.
One of the important parts of making our whiskey is making sure that what's coming off the still is precisely what we want. And we call that taking the cuts. And this is coming off at about 150 proof. So I'm not going to drink it as it is. I'm going to add a little bit of water. And this is still delicious. This is going into our 53-gallon barrels that we're going to age for over 3 to 4 years. This is a perfect blend of that spicy rye signature that we really enjoy. Cheers.
So Herman and I are both whiskey guys. One of the things that we wanted to do when we started Dad's Hat is actually make whiskey that was highly, highly drinkable. Good whiskey should be very soft on the back of the throat, regardless of the proof level. It should be the type of thing that you should put a smile on your face when you finish drinking it.
This whiskey we're sampling right now will be our next bottled and bond. So this is over 4 years old. In the barrel at about 120 proof. And it's delicious.
Our primary whiskey, which is Dad's Hat Pennsylvania Rye whiskey, is a small barrel aged whiskey. This was named Whiskey Advocate's Craft Whiskey of the Year. This particular whiskey, which is a vermouth finished whiskey, it's whiskey that's been re-aged in sweet vermouth barrels. That was named one of the top 100 spirits in the world by Wine Enthusiast magazine. That's across all vodkas, ryes, gins, whiskeys, scotches. I can keep on going. Tequilas.
Using local ingredients. Even our bottles are made in Pennsylvania. We're very proud of that as well.
They're in the shape of a Pennsylvania Keystone. They have a little bit of that old style hip pocket flask thing going on. When you do come in, we'll teach you everything you ever wanted to know about whiskey, but we're afraid to ask. Then people stop here at our bar. What we do is we'll do whiskey sampling and tastings. And then this fall, we're actually going to be introducing a cocktail program. So people will be able to, after the tour, stop and enjoy a Dad's Hat cocktail. So thanks for listening. Appreciate your time and attention. We look forward to seeing you here at Dad's Hat. Cheers.
There's a little known concoction around these parts.
We'll get started in just a little bit.
Made by two long-time
Sit back,
friends
relax, wear your
right
hat,
here inside the old
grab your
Grundy
whiskey.
factory building here in Bristol. What is it? Well, let's just say it's something that goes down real smooth. Hi, this is Chuck Thomas, and we're going to get to the bottom of this mystery on Eat This. I know many of you have heard of craft breweries, but did you know that there are craft distilleries out there? Well, welcome to Mountain Laurel Spirits, one of the newest craft distilleries in Pennsylvania, and the makers of Dad's Hat Rye whiskey. And I'm here with founders, John Cooper, Herman Mihalich. And
this
guys,
is the vintage one. This goes back a few
tell me
years.
a little bit of why rye whiskey.
Yeah.
What made you?
Yeah,
think
these
of,
are
you know
some
what?
older videos, I think.
We need some rye whiskey around here. What was it?
Well, most importantly, rye whiskey is the historical whiskey from Pennsylvania. Even back as far as the Revolutionary War, they were making rye whiskey in Pennsylvania. And the tradition grew through the 19th century to where Pennsylvania was the leading producer of whiskey in general, and rye whiskey in particular, in the country. So before Prohibition, there were something over 160 stills.
163 distilleries.
160 distilleries in Pennsylvania.
It's a lot.
So, yeah, Pennsylvania was a very important whiskey-making state. And we're bringing that tradition back to Pennsylvania, and rye whiskey is really at the center of that tradition.
The tradition for Herman and John actually started back in 1976 when they were fraternity brothers at the University of Pennsylvania. Some 30 years later, these college buddies came together again to build a distillery, and in 2012, they sold their first bottle of Dad's Hat Rye whiskey.
This particular whiskey was put into the barrels back on September 20th, 2012. So today is actually the 9-month anniversary. There's a lot of malt in this one, a little bit of grass, and some nice florals. Excellent. It's exactly the flavor profile we're looking for. Very happy with this one.
Now it's splashing on me. Am I allowed to take that home with me, or can I just lick that off?
Now that's when you say, yes, officer. Honestly, I do work at a whiskey distillery.
I am going to smell like a
Yeah, you will smell like.
whiskey barrel.
That's exactly right. Chuck, what I want to do is I'm going to show you how to make one of the simplest, most classic drinks in the American drink repertoire. It's called whiskey sour. There's basically 3 ingredients. One is a fresh lemon. The second is some simple syrup. The last ingredient, and the most important, is Dad's Hat Pennsylvania Rye whiskey.
There you go.
So we want to take the juice of 1 whole lemon. So we want to do 1 ounce of simple syrup.
All right, it's 9 o'clock.
And then we do.
I'm going to. We're gonna get started here.
2
We
ounces
have
of Dad's Hat Rye.
honored guest Herman here with us. I'm gonna stop this video, but I am gonna play that Bucks County video again, just for people that actually just joined us on time and didn't get a chance to see that, because that's a beautiful video. But we're about to get started. There's already a question in the queue, and we do have our friend from Taiwan joining us, Hoten. And are you there? You there? Want to say hi? But feel free to leave messages, everybody. If you have any questions or anything like that, I'll try to get to everybody's questions. But again, grab your Dad's Hat whiskey if you have it, and also if you have a hat, feel free to grab it as well. So
I've got both. I got the whiskey and the hat. So.
Yeah. Oh, I don't. So it's really sad because I don't have any Dad's Hat here. And for those of you who don't know, I'm abroad. I'm in Taiwan right now, and Herman's in the U.S. And but we're just gonna kick this off officially right now with this video, because this is a beautifully made video, and Herman loves it, right? You love it.
Yeah, it's very well done. It's a little short in the beginning, but we were very fortunate to have an experienced videographer from National Geographic who filmed these for Bucks County's Tourism Promotion Board. And we were selected as one of the people. So,
yeah, National Geographic, and it's just so great that you guys got to be on the video, because you guys are obviously a big part of Bucks County and Pennsylvania industry, right? And this, I think, just really captures that spirit, and National Geographic. What can I say, right? Let's take a look at this here. Bucks County is where the distillery is.
We source our grain from that farm right here in Bucks County.
Yep, locally sourced grains. Oh, we got Dave here with us. Dave was supposed to visit, but I'm going to be quiet for now.
My dad owned a neighborhood tavern, just like this one, back in the small town in western Pennsylvania, where I grew up. He was a stickler for detail.
That's your dad. I can see him. Right. You guys look.
Yep. And he nearly always wore a hat. Real hats. The kind you only see in old pictures or movies these days. For him, they were more than a fashion statement. His hats were a symbol of the optimism and style of that era. They showed that he cared about quality, polish, and finish from an age when taking the time to do things the right way mattered. We make Dad's Hat Rye right here in a restored textile mill in Bristol because we too want to do it the right way. To take up a tradition and make something that matters by hand, small batches, using only natural, local ingredients and the most careful methods. We make Dad's Hat in honor of that wonderful, optimistic time in America's history when we made a lot of things and took care to make them well. My heart tells me that many of us are searching for that spirit again. And Bucks County is the perfect place to recapture that spirit. People here appreciate craft, history, and tradition. And by the way, I kept those hats. I still wear them. And you know what? they fit perfectly. My name is Herman Mihalich, and Bucks County is my home.
Very amazing video. I'm going to go ahead and pause it. So it looks like we have quite a few friends joining us right now. Let's close that up. All right, let's get the big shot. All right, so thanks everybody for joining. We have actually quite a few people. This is actually probably one of the larger live streams we have over 50 people live, or more than 50 people live right now. And we do have our friends, Dave, who was supposed to be with me in Philadelphia to visit the distillery, but unfortunately was not able to. And we do have Ho Tun Yao and your friend Lewis Thomas, Herman's favorite Scottish friends watching from Florida.
Yeah.
With that hat in hand, ready to hear some classic Herman stories. So we're gonna have to share some classic Herman stories then.
I'm very proud to say we have a Scottish investor in our business. So I mean,
okay, there you go.
I mean, that gets pretty authentic right there, right? You know,
that is authentic. All right, so it's got Scottish investors here. Patrick Cole, a good friend of mine, he's from the Clonakilty Distillery in Ireland, and he actually wants to talk to you about the malted and unmalted rye. Well, actually, malted and unmalted rye, and what percentage and what differences to bring. And you are very in your videos, even you talk about your mash bill. It's not a secret or anything like that.
We're very open about that stuff.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Our friend Raymond Woods, I'm prepared. Got my dad's hat in front of me. Bought a bottle today for this occasion. About to take my first sip ever. Right. Belinda, hi all from Pittsburgh. Cheers. Hi there, Kim Hall, here with my dad's hat. All right, we're gonna get started. All right, so pretty Pennsylvania centric. So obviously I'm from Pennsylvania. You're from Western Pennsylvania. I grew up in I don't know if you do this, but I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I grew up in Elizabethtown. Oh, Jim's here from Liberty Pole. Jim and Ellen are here from Liberty Pole.
Wow,
our friends. This is so much. There's so much Pennsylvania, PA love right now.
That's great. That's great.
So I grew up in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. So if anybody's from Lancaster area, Lancaster County area, then shout out to 717. That's our zip code. I mean, that's our area code and phone number. And Herman, you're from Western PA, and I did as much research as I could on you and your background, and on Dad's hat and some other things. But how I'd like to say is kind of like, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us your journey and how you got here. I know you spent 30 some years in the corporate world, and it's kind of like this romantic notion of. It's kind of a romantic story of you and your 30-year-long friend, partnering up in starting a awesome distillery. It's kind of like the American dream, right?
Yeah, I mean, we John and I both spent a very long time, over 30 years in corporate America, in the real world, and the first thing that piqued our interest was, well, just to back up a little bit, I grew, as you said, I grew up in Western PA.
Yeah. Tell us about your dad's bar and everything. We saw the bit of that video.
My grandfather was working in the local still mill in the teens 100 years ago, and when and he started drinking rye whiskey that was made in the largest whiskey distillery in North America at the time, which was located right near my hometown, right on the Monongahela River, and when he during Prohibition, he decided to start a speakeasy.
Okay.
That became our family business, our family bar, after Prohibition was over.
Okay, nice.
And I grew up.
Was it like a real speakeasy where like?
Yeah, there was. It was a grocery store in front and a bar in the back.
Okay. So I was gonna say, what was the cover? What was the front business?
It was a grocery store. It was
okay.
A grocery store in front.
And actual speakeasy in the back.
Exactly.
That's cool. I don't think I've ever spoken with a real life, like, descendant of, somebody that actually owned a speakeasy. You hear about it, but you don't, you hear people, there's speakeasy around here and there, but they're not real speakeasies. But this is cool because you guys actually owned a real speakeasy and the front was a grocery store. All right, go ahead.
So, my grandfather turned it into the family bar, a family business in 33. And operated the bar, and I in fact grew up upstairs. I mean, I grew up in the apartment above the bar.
Very nice.
So me and my brother, our job was cleaning the bar, and as early as when I was like 14, I started doing the books. I was the bookkeeper for the business when I was 14. And
nice.
Now, unfortunately, when the Willing Pittsburgh Steel Company closed in 1976, that took a big bite out of the business, and the business actually closed in 77. By that time, I was already going to school, but in the mid 70s, my grandfather had moved in with us and was sharing the apartment with us, and of course, enjoying his rye whiskey, which meant he would tell me, my job before dinner was to bring him his medicine, which was 2 fingers of rye whiskey before dinner.
His medicine,
and in those days, the whiskey he was drinking was mostly Sam Thompson rye, which you can't find anymore. It's long gone.
I was going to say, do you remember what rye it was?
Sam Thompson was his favorite, and that disappeared in the late 70s. And then he started. The only really thing he had available, because he lived to be 95, and even in the early 80s, he was drinking Old Overholt. Was basically all he could find in those days. So I had a kind of this orientation towards rye whiskey and the history. So in 2006, there was an article in the New York Times.
After you spent about 30 years in the corporate world.
Yeah, in the corporate world, suit and tie in the corner, all that kind of stuff.
Yep. And you went to school in Pennsylvania as well.
Yeah, John and I. That's where John and I know each other from. We went to the University of Pennsylvania together.
Yep. So you're hardcore Pennsylvania. You grew up in Pennsylvania, went to school here. Now you're back here starting a business. I just want to point that out just because, it's very, I feel very heartfelt.
Deep roots, very deep roots.
Very deep roots here.
So when we saw this article in the New York Times, it said that rye whiskey in 2006 was basically dead. I mean, it was, you had a couple of, Jim Beam was hanging on, Old Overholt was still there, and there were a few boutique brands out there. But it was pretty sorry market. So the New York Times did this article that said that rye whiskey was going to make a comeback, and mostly because it was just the beginning of the revival of the cocktails, particularly in places like Brooklyn and Fishtown and Philly and places like that, where bartenders were looking back at 100-year-old recipes, and those recipes said, Manhattans were made with rye whiskey, old fashions were made with rye whiskey, so they were looking for rye whiskey. And at the time, John and I, again, we were both, employed in the corporate world, and we kind of joked around with friends saying, wouldn't it be fun to start a distillery? And then after a while, we saw the momentum building for the rye whiskey market. And in 2009, we formed the company. We spent a year doing research on the process. We went back and forth to Michigan State University, which used to have a program called the Artisan Distillery Program. Where we were actually be able to get hands-on experience running their still, testing recipes, getting their advice on yeast selection and all this kind of stuff. So that by 2010, when we had raised the money from mostly fraternity brothers of John and I, that we were able to, we bought the still, started up, and by 2011 we were operating in Bristol.
Yeah, and I also want to point out that you guys persevered in that what was kind of like a downturn in the market, right? 2009, right?
Well, yeah, I mean the market overall was down, but the rye whiskey growth was still pretty strong.
Yeah,
even though the overall economy
just because it was like already at the bottom, there was like
percentage growth was high, volume was not that big. But we were inspired by the idea of bringing rye whiskey back to its historical home in Pennsylvania, because by the time we started, I mean, there hadn't been anyone making rye whiskey in Pennsylvania since the 80s.
Yeah.
So it was kind of fun to bring that tradition back to Pennsylvania. Of course, we've since been joined by lots of other guys, including a couple of the people watching us tonight. The Liberty Pole Spirits, but it's kind of fun to have those roots to look back to and to provide inspiration for the kind of the whiskey we're making today.
Yeah. And Pennsylvania whiskey, essentially kind of died with Michter's. That was kind of like, I think when your videos you reference, you're the last Pennsylvania whiskey since
Michter's. Michter's making whiskey in Pennsylvania in the 80s, and they were the last distillery making whiskey in Pennsylvania before we started in 2011. But the history of Pennsylvania whiskey, for those of you who don't know,
talk a little bit about that. Yeah,
it dates back a long ways. I mean, we had a lot of the early distillers in Pennsylvania, believe it or not. Now, it's you don't think of Mennonites as being associated with alcohol, but because Pennsylvania was a Quaker colony in the 1700s, had an open doors policy towards immigration, and many of the immigrants, the fleeing persecution in Europe, were Mennonites, and they came to Pennsylvania for religious freedom. And it turns out they were some of the best distillers and brewers in Europe, and they brought those skills to Pennsylvania. In fact, a couple of brands. I mean, the Michter's, before Michter's was Michter's, it was Baumburgers, and the Baumburgers were Mennonites. Old Overholt was started by the Overholtzer family. The Overholtzers were Mennonites. In 1810, they started Old Overholt in Pennsylvania. So there's a very rich history. And just before Prohibition, there were over 160 licensed distilleries in Pennsylvania making whiskey, and they were until the early 1900s. Pennsylvania was bigger than Kentucky in terms of whiskey production.
Oh yeah.
Excuse me, a little dry.
Yeah, go ahead. Just water your throat.
Whiskey it. Thank you. So it's kind of cool to bring back that tradition, and we are practicing that tradition today. I mean, we are, the research we did, led us in a direction of making the using the mash bill we practice today, which is an 80% grain and 20% malt. Now, the malt we use is split between, it's 15% malted barley and 5% malted rye. Looking at the research back,
80% unmalted rye.
80% is unmalted rye. That's correct. It's malted. It's just rye grain, and that was because, I mean, again, back in those days, it was just a practical decision. Malt was expensive, grain was not, and through trial and error, they figured out that if you stayed between 15 and 20% malt, you had enough enzyme activity to turn your mash. Now today, you can make a mash. You can convert your mash with less than 15% malt, but that means you're using added enzymes. And there's nothing wrong with adding enzymes, except you lose the malt flavor, and we think that's an important part of the dimension of what makes our whiskey taste the way it does. And
you guys don't use any enzymes. Do you guys use any enzymes, or?
Oh no, we do. We do, and it's basically what we would call belts and suspenders, because if you talk to people in the rye whiskey business, they'll tell you rye is notoriously messy to deal with. And adding those extra enzymes gives you, you want to have the best starch to sugar conversion possible. And because any leftover starch in your mash will cause a lot of foaming and sticking problems during your fermentation and during distillation. So we try to get the best conversion possible. So even though we've run our mash bill without enzymes and it works just fine, we add some enzymes in there just to get really the best conversion possible to avoid the notorious foaming and sticking issues that people confront when they make rye whiskey. So we do add it, but again, for me, it's not the problem. The issue is not adding the enzyme. The issue is taking the malt out. Because the malt, we don't use
losing the character.
You're losing that character. And particularly rye tends to be pretty dry and spicy and grassy. and adding that malt gives it a fruity dimension. Like if you taste some young lowland scotches, you get that kind of fruit that those scotches display. We think you pick up a little bit of that in our whiskey because of the malt we're using, and it's a very flavorful 2-row malt. We're not using 6-row malt. A lot of American big distillers use 6-row malt because it has a lot of enzymes. But 6-row malt doesn't have a lot of flavor. So we use a 2-row malt, which has a fairly high diastatic, equivalent. It provides plenty of enzymes, but it's also, we think, provides a lot of good flavor.
Yeah, we just had Amrut, the Indian whiskey, and they use, we were talking about 6-row, 2-row malts and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I want to catch up a little bit on what people are saying here, because I want to shout out to our fans and your fans here. Let me see here. Herman's on here from Jim and Ellen from Liberty Pole, John and Marta from across the river in New Jersey. Kim Hall, the Roots say hi. The Root says hi.
Yep.
And go Steelers, Jim says. Hi from your cousin. Proud of you, Herman. The Johnstons would be proud. Western PA proud.
Wow. Oh, that's the Johnston side of the family. I have Scottish roots, the Johnstons, and I have a little bit of my mother's family is an old Pennsylvania family. My father's family are from Croatia, but my mother's side of the family are in old Pennsylvania. So we have a lot of Scottish and actually Scotch Irish and some Swiss German background as well. So
there you go. It's in your blood. Herm's Hogs, Bristol Rocks Dad's hat. Oh, and somebody asked you, which fraternity were you and your friend in college?
We were in Phi Sigma Kappa at the University of Pennsylvania.
Phi Sigma Kappa in the University of Pennsylvania.
Long since gone.
Oh, really? Okay. Are there any other chapters around, or?
Well, yeah, there's plenty of chapters around the country.
Okay, not University of Pennsylvania.
University of Pennsylvania chapter ran into a few disciplinary issues in the 1990s, and they've since they're gone. So.
Okay. And then Belinda says, is the mess that you have to deal with the rye, is that what makes people say it's hard to work with? I guess it's because of the rye. Yeah. Yeah, because
the starch profile in rye lends itself to a lot of foaming and makes it also very sticky. Yeah. So if you don't convert that starch thoroughly into sugar during the mashing process, you end up with a lot of foaming and a lot of sticking, both in the fermenters and in the still.
Yeah. Because when you malt it, it becomes more kind of like I guess easily breakable, flakier, right? So
well, if you're using only malted rye, and there's a few guys out there doing just malted ryes, I don't have experience with a pure just all malt, but the malted ryes do have a lot of enzyme content. Malted rye tends to be a high enzyme, and so it does help convert that starch into sugar. So it's all about taking care during your mashing process, both in terms of the enzymes, but also in terms of temperature profile. Mashing, because we don't use any corn. The research we found said that most of the guys were doing mostly rye and malt. They weren't doing any corn. So we use a different temperature profile during the mashing process, which again is tailored to making sure we get really good conversion. And without the corn there, you can use a different temperature profile, which also helps. It reduces what's called balling. If you use high temperatures with rye, you get something called balling, where you get these balls of rye that are kind of hard to break up and bad conversion and things like that. So
so it's great because you are a chemical engineering background.
That's correct. Yeah.
Correct. So you kind of I believe you and John, your partner, were also home brewers. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, that's correct. Okay, because so it's great because you guys both of you guys went to Michigan to take this hands-on distilling class to kind of really get into it. So you guys were prepared. You guys were in this for the long haul, and you guys it wasn't just a kind of on a whim thing. right?
No,
So you guys,
yeah, we did our research, and again, I spent 35 years in the chemical industry. I wasn't an engineer all that time. I was more on the business side, but still, I understood what it takes to take something from the laboratory and take it into industrial scale. And the folks at Michigan State were great with helping us, not only with the training what they did, but they also allowed us to bring. We actually shipped rye grain from Pennsylvania up there and ran recipe tests.
Wow.
And we had guys up there who was giving us advice on the malt selection, enzyme selection, all that kind of stuff. Things that these guys had an intimate knowledge of, and that helped us a lot. I mean, that was a great program for us. And we drove my old Jeep up there several times just to to attend these things. And we if you ever go to Lansing, you got to go to the Tuba Museum. There's a restaurant and Tuba Museum in Lansing. We spent a few hours there.
So that's just really cool because I've done several of these interviews, and a lot of people that are really doing great stuff is just they have that kind of that home brewing background, right? And they also have maybe a science background, and you kind of have both, right? So you have the chemical engineer. How useful is it to be a chemical engineer and to be a distiller?
I think it's very important for us. I mean, I know. In fact, I've hired somebody to work with us. He's now our distiller. He does most of the hands-on work. As Travis Scott is his name.
Oh, great.
He's a master's degree chemical engineer from Drexel. I mean, because I want people. We have a 2,000 liter still. I want somebody running that still who knows what they're doing. If something goes sideways, they know how to react. It doesn't always go perfectly, so you've got to be able to react on the fly. If your fermentation didn't go the way you wanted, or if sometimes you have a challenge in the summertime when your cooling water temperatures aren't what they want them to be, and things like that. So I want somebody who understands what's going on in that still to be there to react and steer us in the right directions to be sure that the product coming off that still is what we want to be going into the barrels.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? And we can take a little. How about we? You're already drinking the Dad's Hat Rye whiskey, and unfortunately, I don't have it. But I am very familiar with the profile because my friends and I from the Philadelphia Whiskey Society, which is a group that I run in Philadelphia, we actually went to the distillery. We picked our own 15-gallon barrel.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, we picked our own 15-gallon barrel, and we tasted about, I think it was almost like a dozen or so, or maybe like 8 or 10.
It was a long afternoon, yes.
Yeah, it was. So we tasted 8 or 10 barrels straight from the casks themselves, and we picked one, and it was what you call the Franken barrel. Right.
Yeah, that barrel was when it was younger. It had a very strange flavor profile. So we kept putting it on the side and saying, okay, we got to give it more time. We got to give it more time.
Yeah.
And you guys seem to have picked it up at the sweet spot there because in its younger age, it really was the unwanted stepchild. We pushed it off to the side. And you guys stepped in after, and again, you compared it to some of the other things you were tasting. And I think what put it over the edge for you guys was that because the longer it sits in the barrel, it picks up a bit more of that bourbony sweetness to it, and I think that appealed to a lot of your members.
Yeah, and it was very unique and it was very complex, right? So, one thing I really enjoy about the Dad's Hat Rye whiskey, like you were saying, it really does have that kind of depth and character that you don't really see a lot with a lot of other whiskeys, especially craft whiskeys. So craft whiskeys, a lot of times, and there are great craft whiskeys out there, and not to bust on craft whiskey or anything like that, but a lot of times, any kind of whiskey can be kind of linear, right? It can be a single kind of profile, or it doesn't have much depth, complexity. But I think Dad's Hat Rye, especially when you're talking about straight from the cask, or like your cask strength, or you guys now have a straight rye, bottle and bond. Some of these more mature whiskeys in your portfolio, I think they're just great. And if you're talking about rye whiskey, right? Because some your Maryland style ryes, right? Your Maryland style ryes, high corn content, supposed to be more sweet. Sagamore, for example, they make great rye, and it's great, but it's definitely different from the Dad's Hat Rye profile. Do you ever get in this conversation with people in regards to, like, let's say your everyday kind of old overhaul rye, or like your big name ryes, and not to kind of discount what they're doing, but Rittenhouse rye or some of these other ryes you just kind of see on the market? Like what's like that when you drink your rye? And I'm sure you've drank plenty of ryes. Like what's that profile that Herman drinks, and this is like, oh, this is our rye. This is what makes our rye different, and this is that key, secret ingredient, the dash of that makes Herman's whiskey different.
Well, I think
how do you describe it?
There's a few elements to it. Number one, and believe it or not, it starts with the grain. We're very fortunate that you showed that video earlier that we have a very tight partnership with our grain supplier. And right now, we almost all of our grain. Right now, all of our grain comes from the same farm, Meadowbrook Farms, with the Meese family. The Meese family's been growing rye on that land for 300 years, so they kind of know what they're doing. Wow. And one of the things that talking to people in Kentucky, there are, like, Wild Turkey buys their rye from Germany, which blows my mind. Why are you bringing rye from another continent? Part of the reason is because rye as a minor crop is kind of neglected by a lot of the trading business in grain. By dealing directly with the farmer, Nevada Meese is the guy's name. I mean, he leaves that grain in the ground until mid-July. I mean, he harvests that grain very late. It's a very mature, a very ripe rye berry. We've had farmers that I've had to say no. I send the stuff back because rye is very tall. Rye is in the summertime, if you get a storm, it can tend to fall down, what's called lodging, and which makes it impossible to harvest. So a lot of farmers get squirrely and they want to take it out of the field too young. And if you take it out of the field too young, it's green. It smells like hay. It doesn't smell like rye. And so having a farmer who leaves that stuff in the ground until it's fully mature, and then we get that rye from him. And then and I've had this discussion with people in Kentucky all the time. They're going, you can't get a good rye from American farmers. I'm saying, no, you can. You just got to work with the farmer. You can't work with a grain dealer or with a grain elevator, because most of the stuff, the rye that comes to market in the Midwest is there as feed or seed. It's not there for whiskey or for bread. So by getting that really high quality raw material is the first starting point. Second, using the high malt content that we have. That, again, that malt, the fruitiness from that malt balances that spicy dryness and grassiness from the rye. That, for example, all the MGP ryes, they're 95% grain. They're only 5% malt. So, and people talk about MGP ryes as being sort of green and pickly and stuff like that, because I think that the reason is because they don't have a lot of malt. And then the other dimension is in Kentucky, where they use a lot of corn. I mean, I've talked to the master distiller from Woodford, and when they came out with their Woodford rye, they on purpose made it very high corn because they wanted it to be an easy move from the guys who've been buying Woodford all these years to buy Woodford rye. It wasn't a big leap for them. It was, it's like it's almost like a high rye bourbon than it is. So if you want to say what makes us unique, it's the really high quality rye grain. Number two is the high malt content. We also do sweet mashing. We don't do sour mashing, which I'm not, it's debatable as to what effect that has. It really affects the pH level during fermentation. And I don't think there's enough studies to say definitively what that brings, but that is the tradition in Pennsylvania. So I think all of those things together, plus being careful about the aging process, because we do 15-gallon barrels, and you have to be careful that you don't leave them in there too long because you pick up too much wood. And then we're also doing the 53s. And we also, what's also important there is that when we're running the still, if the whiskey coming off the still is going into the 15-gallon barrels, we take different cuts off the still than we do when we go into the 53s. If we're going into the 53s, we take a fatter cut.
Okay.
Because it's for over 4 years, you're going to have the opportunity for that extra flavor to mature and turn into interesting flavors, rather than, I mean, you can't make 4-year-old whiskey in a 15-gallon barrel. I mean, in my opinion. So,
yeah.
I mean, but our 15-gallon whiskey,
over oaked, right? It'll be over oaked.
Yeah, I mean, our 15-gallon whiskey, it's delicious, but it's designed from the get-go with the cuts off the still to be adapted to the small barrel aging. So we dial things in.
So you took a smaller cut. You took a smaller cut with the 15 gallons, and then larger cuts with the 53 gallons. Because you guys do have 53 gallons now.
Oh yeah, I mean, all of our straight whiskey, we have 53-gallon barrels dating back to 2013.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
The bottle and bond that we just put out was all distilled 2014.
Yeah.
And all of our green label, this stuff is all minimum 4 years old. That's all 53-gallon whiskey.
Okay.
So the only whiskey that is from the 15s is our 90 proof classic, what we call our 90 proof classic rye. That's 15-gallon. All of our straight whiskey is 53-gallon whiskey.
Gotcha. And then the one that we got, it was the 15-gallon. That I really enjoyed that at cast strength. I really
I mean, look, you can make nice whiskey in a 15-gallon barrel. It's not going to be.
It was about 2 years, I think. Yeah.
You know.
So Herman, can you drink some of your whiskey and share with us kind of like your tasty notes on the Dad's Hat, and like what are from the distiller himself, like what are the tasting notes that you taste and you want us to be able to find and capture?
So you're gonna force me to drink whiskey? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, twist your arm, right? Twist your arm.
Twist my arm. Well, what I'm drinking tonight is our 4-year-old straight whiskey. It's the Green Label Straight Rye. It's a wonderful sipping whiskey. And basically, again, because the whiskey that has gone into these 53-gallon barrels is a fatter cut off the still, so it's got a little more of a some of that fruit I talked about earlier. It kind of matures into
like mature fruits, kind of like maybe like a preserve.
Yeah,
I think it's definitely it's not like this fresh like green. It's not like this fresh like what I would call
fresh orchard fruit. Like in the 90 proof classic is more fresh fruit, like apricot and apple and things like that. This is darker fruit. You get sort of a dry fruits and figs and things like that. So it's a deeper, richer flavor profile from the fruit side. From the and of course, because it spent more time in wood, it does pick up more of that classic. One of the things that one of the dividing lines between our 15-gallon whiskey and our 53-gallon straight whiskey is in the 15-gallon barrels. It's been aged for less than a year. So it picks up the caramelized flavors from the wood, but it doesn't pick up much vanilla. So you'll taste, like if you make caramel at home and you don't add vanilla to it, it's a very different tasting thing than the caramels you find in the store. Because you buy a caramel at the candy store, it's got vanilla in it. And that's the difference with this. We're starting to get that vanilla extraction from the barrels after 4 years. And that takes a bit of time. In my opinion, you don't get that in a young barrel. But you get the caramel, but you don't get the vanilla. So that's the other distinctive note that you pick up on here is those vanillic flavor profile. Gotcha. So you get, and then also the floral, it goes from vegetal to more floral. So in the younger whiskeys, it's more grassy and vegetal. Here, it's more deep floral. It's sort of like when you walk into a flower shop. You get that. You walk into a flower shop on a warm day, and you get, that kind of overwhelming, essence, and that's what you get from this. Rather than, you get that sort of a deep, sense to it. So we still get that upfront spiciness. That's characteristic of the rye itself. And depending on which one you're talking about, I mean, like. You get some of these sort of the red pepper, roasted red pepper kind of finish to it as well. So
I definitely get that kind of like toast, So I think for me as can we see that the color of that whiskey? Can you put it closer up? to the camera up here a little bit. Yeah. So that's just kind of this deep, rich, dark amber color. It's beautiful. You guys obviously don't add any coloring.
No, we don't. We add absolutely nothing.
Simple filtering. Obviously, no sugar or anything like added. Simple filtering. Are you guys chill filtering at all, or
we don't do any chill filtering. We do.
No.
We do as light the filtering as we can.
Yeah.
We've had some. We tried cutting back on the filtering even more, and we got a couple of complaints from distributors where they said, customers are bringing it back and they don't want things floating in their whiskey. So we get stuff. Although we just did a single barrel for a whiskey club in Kentucky, and they wanted no filtering. They want chunks, everything. So
yeah. It was kind of like us. I think we did the most simple filter. I think.
Yes, you did. You guys are. Yeah. I think you'll find some chunks in your bottles.
Yeah, too. Ours was, and to us, that's kind of whiskey gold. It's like striking whiskey gold. Or I'm looking for that.
Speaking of color, just another little fun anecdote about Pennsylvania Rye whiskey. If you pick up your copy of Moby Dick, I'm sure you've got sitting at home.
Yes.
There's a reference to Pennsylvania whiskey in Moby Dick.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. There's and this was written in the 1850s or 1860s when Pennsylvania Rye whiskey was king, right? So, the reason why I think it's an interesting reference is because Melville, he talks about how they harpoon the whale, the blood bubbles up, and first he says it looks kind of like red wine, and then he says, or that old Monongahela, which was a nickname for Pennsylvania.
Monongahela.
And the reason why
I had to look up how to pronounce that, actually. In my research, I had to look up how to pronounce that because
Monongahela.
People are saying Monongahela, Monongahela, but it's Monongahela. It's Monongahela. Monongah River Valley.
Monongahela River, yeah.
Monongahela, that's Hella, right? Hella or something.
Yeah. So it's but the reason why I think it's an interesting citation is because Melville puts it in the book, just assuming everybody knows what that means because it was so popular.
Yeah,
so, I mean, so it was a cultural reference that he puts in the book, assuming everyone knows what that is.
Yeah,
so I think it's a powerful statement about how popular Pennsylvania Rye whiskey was in the mid 19th century.
So I want to also share some statistics also, just in general, the colonies and back then, from 1732 to about the 18th century, end of the 18th century, late 1700s, the colonies went from 2,000 people to about 2 million people, right? And after the American Revolution, because before that, a lot of people were actually drinking a lot of rum just because of the trade from the Caribbean to the United States, and from the United States back to the England, and people were drinking a lot of rum. But then after the Revolution, that wasn't happening anymore, and so people were starting to make their own whiskey and whatnot. And of course, rye being in kind of the indigenous grain, or the grain that survived well, because barley didn't really do as well as they did here. And like you were saying, a lot of European settlers came here, and a lot of Irish, a lot of Scots. They knew the craft of distilling, but they were trying to plant barley and didn't do as well as rye, because rye actually can survive below freezing temperatures. Right. And
farmers love rye. It's very easy to grow.
Yeah, it's very, very hardy grain. And then same thing with same reason why people in Canada, the Canadians use rye, because obviously it's much colder. Yeah. They need a tough grain up there, right? So rye is like one of those grains that really is tough and can grow in these below freezing temperatures. And corn obviously didn't do as well. So in cold temperatures, and corn did much better down south of Kentucky than it did. And one of the statistics that I found, which I felt it was very, very poignant, was in 1810. So the book Moby Dick was, you said 1850, right?
1860s.
1860s, right? So even up, all the way up until like the end of the 19th century, that era. Kentucky made 2.2 million gallons of bourbon in 1810. Okay, that same year, so just Pennsylvania. So it's not including. So Maryland rye was really popular. Pennsylvania rye was popular, right? But in Pennsylvania, they just shipped 6.5 million gallons, mostly of the Monongahela rye. So we can just from that we know from what you were saying about the reference to Moby Dick, there's 3 times more whiskey being made back then than bourbon was being made. So that was a lot, and that was just Pennsylvania. That was just being shipped. And most of it was that Monongahela rye whiskey, right?
It's a big deal. It's a very big deal.
Yeah. So great statistic there. But then, of course, as you mentioned earlier, of course, after Prohibition and the wars, and it's sad that almost pretty much Pennsylvania whiskey just got wiped out and whatnot.
I think in my opinion, one of the biggest factors was the fact that when the Canadians started smuggling whiskey into the United States during the Prohibition. They called it rye whiskey.
They called it rye whiskey, yeah.
And it was mostly the Canadians had a problem. They had a very finite amount of whiskey for a very big market. So that's when they started blending whiskey. And the Canadian blends are not like Scotch blends. I mean, Scotch blends it's a different category. Canadian blends are basically just whiskey cut with neutral spirits. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And by the end of Prohibition, the Canadians didn't even have whiskey to blend, so they were just taking neutral spirits and adding prune juice and caramel color to it, and they called it rye whiskey for marketing reasons. Yeah. And so when rye whiskey from Pennsylvania came back into the game, people were saying rye whiskey sucks, and so they had a tough time. Plus, by that time, the big Canadian companies had built a war chest of money. And they drove the prices down, which made it difficult for Pennsylvania to continue.
So in Canada, rye whiskey is a type of whiskey. So you could actually have corn whiskey and call it rye whiskey. You don't even have to have rye in your whiskey in Canada to call it rye whiskey.
That's correct.
Charlie, so a couple questions. Charlie says the Whiskey Rebellion PA is a huge part of our history. Yes, obviously, Whiskey Rebellion was also a big part of that. Obviously, the Americans at the time just finished, fighting the English, who were kind of taxing them incessantly. And now, because the United States is in debt, they started taxing the whiskey makers and whatnot. Right. So obviously, people were angry about that. So Whiskey Rebellion, very interesting history. Western PA, where you're from, very big. That was a very big part of the history. I know Liberty Pole also, they do like a little thing and a big thing around that as well.
Oh yeah, we had a great. They do a really great festival out there every year. And this past year, again, thanks to Jim and Ellen, they organized an effort where I think it was 9 different distillers in Pennsylvania contributed whiskey to a blend that we sold. That was sold at the festival out there and to raise money for the local historical society and so forth, which was a really cool project.
I just think that's really cool. I just think, it's just really, you had about, how many distilleries were there? How many distillers? You said 9?
I think it was 9. If Jim and Ellen are still there, they could type in the right number.
Yeah, it's really cool bottling. So you had 9 different Pennsylvania distilleries come together to make one whiskey, and I just think that's just so kind of moving, so touching, right? And you guys all went to Pittsburgh and blended this whiskey, and you came out with it, and somebody actually online with us is drinking that bottle right now.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah. And John Urbanchuk asks about the Rosen Rye. Did you have anything to do with that? Yep. Anything to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, back in the early parts of doing the research, there was a lot of information about Rosen Rye.
Yeah, I know Stolen Wolf is making a Rosen Rye whiskey now.
Yes,
Are you guys using Rosen Rye, or is Chuck's question or is John's question just about in general the Rosen Rye?
No, well, John is actually a professor at Del Valle University. We're doing some work. And Stolen Wolf is working with the rye coming from Penn State.
Gotcha.
And so we basically several years ago, Rosen Rye was something mentioned in a lot of literature. And I started calling people up and asking them where we can get some Rosen Rye, and nobody had heard of it. So I went to Rosen Rye was initially introduced at Michigan State University in 1909.
Yeah.
So I actually called Michigan State and I said, do you have any historical knowledge of where this is, where it went? And they recommended that we go to the seed repository, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, where they keep samples of all different kinds of product. And so Penn State and Del Val were able to get samples of these of the Rosen Rye and started planting it years ago, because they only would give you 5 grams of seed, which doesn't even fit in your hand. So it's taken several years to get to a big enough harvest. And the Stolen Wolf is working with Penn State. We're working with Del Val. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier. It astonishes me when I talk to people in Kentucky who say that Pennsylvania or American farmers can't make a rye of sufficient quality for use. And whether it's Rosen Rye or something else that is adapted best to Mid-Atlantic markets, I mean, Pennsylvania farmers could certainly grow a high quality rye grain to supply the distilling industry, both in Pennsylvania and Kentucky and everywhere else. So I see this as more is an effort to, hearkening back to the historical references to Rosen Rye. If Rosen Rye turns out to be the right selection, great. But in general, I think it's an education process at Penn State, at Del Val, and amongst the couple of distillers that are working with it, is to say, let's get Rosen Rye or let's get rye grain in general as a cash crop for Pennsylvania farmers to supply to the distilling industry. And this goes back to what I was saying before. Quality raw material gives you a good quality product. Whether it's Rosen Rye or not, Rosen Rye was very popular for a long time, and we made a small batch of it at the distillery.
It's aging right now.
No, because we didn't make enough. I ran it. Believe it or not, I have my grandpap sold 5 gallons still.
Okay.
And, which is federally registered, by the way. It's legal.
Yeah.
So the Del Val had a poor harvest and we were able to only make a certain amount in our small still. Stolen Wolf got a bigger quantity from Penn State, and so they were able to make enough to start aging some. But we're going to have another harvest this summer, and Penn State will too. And the idea is to start spreading this through farms in Pennsylvania, so to make it available for everybody. And and again, after having done a little more studying and attended a couple of seminars and things to learn more about this, Rosen Rye may or may not be the optimal solution, but it's a reference point. It's a reference point, and there are some other varietals out there that may or may not, that may be the best. But I think the idea of generating the interest among Pennsylvania farmers to grow high quality rye grain that we could use to make whiskey here in Kentucky, Indiana. Because Indiana, same thing. The MGP is buying their rye grain from Canada, Sweden, and Germany. I mean, it just blows my mind that the grain is being shipped around the world when you got farmers right down the road who are perfectly capable with a little bit of support and guidance to grow a very high quality raw material.
Yeah. So I think that's just really, really cool. You guys are digging up, heritage rye grains and growing them and harvesting them and making real whiskey. Did you tasted the whiskey, right? How did it taste? Was it unique and incredible?
We only had it as a white dog. Okay. Yeah. So, but what I also did is back in my industrial days, I actually worked in the flavor and fragrance industry.
Okay.
So I sent a sample to an old friend of mine who has access to a lab at a flavor company, and we've done sort of a deep dive with gas chromatography analysis on the samples on the white dog, and there are some indications that there are some differences in the flavor profile. Now it's very preliminary because we've done we took some few samples. It's not a big enough sample size to say this with any definite certainty, but it seems to be some of particularly the higher molecular weight fatty acid esters. There seem to be more of those species in the White Dog, and that will contribute to some of the heavier fruity flavors in the whiskey down the road. But again, what's cool is that, again, from my chemistry background and working with these guys who are truly experts in the field, to identify flavor components that they think will be influential in the whiskey down the road. I love that Stone Wolf has been selling some as White Dog. I think they put some down. Hopefully next year we will make enough to get a couple of barrels going.
Yeah, special release.
Yeah, but I think right now doing the chemical analysis is a good start for us.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so I also have some pictures of the distilleries that you shared with me, and I kind of want to give just for those of you guys that maybe did not get a chance to go to the distillery or anything like that, we can take a look here, and I have to.
No, that's me.
That's you. Yep. All right. So there's going to be a handful of pictures here. So this is kind of like your storage, your distillery / warehouse is it's in under one roof.
Well, we do. Well, as you know, we do our 53-gallon barrels. We store some of them downstairs, but the vast majority of them are stored on the 5th floor. We have a 5,000 square feet on the 5th floor just for barrels. And those are all the 53s, because they're going to be aged for 4 years.
So is this picture from the 4th floor?
No, this is from we have a small section of 53-gallon barrels in the distillery. Yeah, but most of the barrels in the distillery are the 15s. This happens to be the one corner where we keep some 53s that we are just now starting to harvest, with some pretty amazing results, by the way. So it's
okay. So let's talk about where are you getting your casks from?
We get our casks almost exclusively from McGinnis Wood Products in Cuba, Missouri.
Okay.
They've been making barrels for a long, long time. They do a super job. We were very fortunate that in 2013, when they started making 15-gallon barrels, someone introduced us to them. Okay. So they had been making 53s for a long time. So as we started buying 53s, we were able to source our 15s from them as well. And of course, the key there is the quality of the wood. I mean, they've been sourcing wood for barrels for, I think, like 40 years now. So they have a great stockpile of very well matured, well seasoned oak, Ozark mountain oak. So it's we're very fortunate. They're a super great company, nice people to work with, and we've always had great results with their barrels.
Gotcha. And then so tell us the specs. Like, can you share with us the specs of what you're ordering from them?
Yeah, the 53s are a three char.
Three char.
The 15s are a number 4 char.
4 char.
Little slightly darker char. And once in a while, they give us some interesting products, some interesting barrels. Typically, they supply barrels to Buffalo Trace, and a lot of them end up in the Colonel Taylor single barrel selections.
Okay.
And so we
not a bad whiskey.
Our current Bottle and Bond, the 2014 distillation Bottle and Bond released several months ago. All that whiskey was aged in the same group of barrels we got in 2014 from them, which were leftovers. They basically didn't fit on the truck to Buffalo Trace, and they called me up and said, "Do you want these barrels?" And the difference being that instead of being between 1 and 2 years of air drying, these are all minimum of 3 years of the wood's been air dry for a minimum of 3 years.
Oh wow! Okay.
And so
normally normally your barrels are 1 to 2 year air dry.
1 to 2 year air dry, yeah.
So these special barrels were 3 years air dried.
Correct.
Yeah, and they were 3 char still, or
3 char. Yep.
Level 3 char. Okay, yeah.
So if you buy our red label bottle and bond that's currently selling, that comes from those barrels in 2014.
Quick, in a quick piece of information, you guys are. Oh, somebody did ask, because you guys are open and selling online right now.
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, we in the state of Pennsylvania, we are allowed to sell online and ship directly to customers. We had not been doing that in the past, but in the current situation where the state stores are effectively closed, they've opened them with some curbside service, but it's still pretty erratic from what we understand. So we started about 10 days ago just to sell online. We can only deliver to Pennsylvania residents.
Yeah.
But it's in this current situation where the state of Pennsylvania is our biggest customer. It's been a lifeline for us because we're able to. It basically keeps the lights on,
Yeah. And then so just I want to make sure we give you a plug. It's dadshat.com.
dadshatrye.com. When you go to the landing page. When you go to the landing page, there's a button right in the middle of the landing page that says buy here, and you can click through there, and that'll take you to the store where you could order online.
And you can order that the bottle and bond that you're talking about.
Bottle and bond you can order. You can the bottle and bond, the classic 90, our honey finish. We sold out of Rock and Rye, unfortunately. We have some more. We just have to bottle it. And the bottle and bond. I think that's about it. Yeah.
And we were talking earlier, and this morning you were at the distillery, and you're still chugging along. You're still plugging away and
because we're trying to get the orders out in a timely fashion. So all the orders that came in on Friday, we put them in boxes and got them ready to go so that UPS can pick them up this morning, so that they'll be delivered on Monday.
Yeah. And so definitely, guys, if you guys need your whiskey, obviously Pennsylvania's shut down. Support your local craft distillers. Support people like Herman. This is also obviously a tough time for everybody. But if you need your booze, consider Dad's Hat and go on their website, dadshatrye.com, and just help them keep the lights on. Buy that bottle and bond, which was supposed to be for the Buffalo Trace C.H. Taylor whiskey, and you get that right there.
No, the bottle and bonds. The other interesting thing about the bottle and bond is that during that window, we were actually buying some rye from a different farm for a short period of time, and that rye is very spicy. So that bottle and bond. It started off as kind of a green pepper jalapeno profile, but after 5 years in a barrel, it's kind of turned into, like if you ever go to like a hoagie shop and you get those red cherry Italian peppers.
Oh yeah, I love those.
Yeah, well, that you're going to get that in the bottle and bond.
Okay, so though it's kind of spicy, peppery.
Yep.
There, but I'm sure lots of vanillas. So also with
the barrel rounds it out beautifully. I mean, it's balanced very well with the barrel. Very nice.
That's how I also get this kind of hint of like cocoa, with you guys. Definitely a little bit of cocoa, almost like a little bit of coffee, cocoa. This kind of deep richness I really enjoy. What's this we got here? What are we looking at here?
Oh, those are. Oh, I forgot to mention we do 2 wine barrel finishes as well, which are on the website as well. Also. We buy port wine barrels and vermouth barrels from California. From Quaddy Winery, and we take the whiskey after it's been aged in the new oak, and we put it in those wine barrels to finish. So we have a port barrel finish and the only uniquely sweet vermouth barrel finish whiskey I think in the world. The Yippee-Ki-Yay from High West does a similar thing, but they also finish. They put them in a different barrel. I think it's like a Petite Syrah or something after that. So, but our vermouth finish is strictly barrels that were used to age sweet vermouth.
Yeah, so these are some wine casks you guys aged.
Yep.
You know, you finished. You
Finished.
guys used your
No,
traditional.
it's new oak first.
Yeah.
New oak first, and then we put it in there afterwards.
Yeah. And how long are you guys usually doing like for your port? Like how often how long are you finishing the port?
It depends on the barrels. I mean, we started doing what's anywhere from 3 to 6 months, but
okay.
What we're doing now is we have actually blending tanks, because when we take the first time we use these barrels, the port effect is too strong in our opinion.
Oh, okay.
So what we do is we use the barrels twice or even 3 times, because we don't want it to be port that has a little bit of whiskey flavor. We want it to be whiskey that has a little bit of a port flavor.
A little accent, port accent. Kiss of port.
Exactly. And sometimes we get the barrels. Literally, the barrels come back when we get them. You open them up the bung, and you look inside, and they're glistening wet. You know.
Yeah.
So we don't want the port to overwhelm the whiskey. So we use them 2 or 3 times. We put the whiskey in for sometimes the third time we'll leave it in longer, and that just it doesn't pull that much more port out. But the fact that these barrels are well used, they're actually quite neutral. Yeah. And so they give a very subtle sweetness to the whiskey in that longer period of time, which we blend into our tank that goes eventually into the bottles.
And I've said this quite a few times. I just love how craft distilleries are kind of at the forefront of innovation, and it motivates and even motivates big distillers to do something innovative and unique. Like port finished rye, and it's delicious, right? And vermouth and these wine cask finishes, all just great ideas, and making it just produces great whiskey. And I just huh?
It's fun. It's really fun, and we're going to start doing we're going to start doing some experimenting with some new things coming up this fall.
Yeah. Anything you want to share?
Not yet. We'll see. We have to test, because we've had a couple of stinkers. I mean, Quaddy Wineries makes a really nice Fino sherry.
Oh, okay.
But it just didn't work for us. I mean,
no.
I mean, it just clashed. Like, it didn't work. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You got to try it.
Yeah.
I mean, mostly the sherries that are used for whiskey aging are Olorosos. But we wanted to go with something a little drier, so we tried the Fino, and it didn't work.
It didn't work. Okay, all right. And these are your 15s, it looks like.
Yeah, those are a couple of 15s. Where'd you find these pictures, man? I haven't seen those in a while.
I got digging. I spent the whole week digging, man.
Digging through the archives. Yeah, jeez.
Yeah. So these are also from Missouri. Level 4 char. 1 to 2 year air dried, right? Correct. Do you guys tell them to toast at all?
We've not done any toasting. No, I know it's pretty popular right now. There's with the 46 is one of the ones with use the toasted barrels. No, we're
air dry and charred.
Air dry and charred. Yeah, we're I think this fall we're going to start looking at some new things to do. But we're it doesn't sound like a long time. I mean, it feels like a long time. We've been doing this now for over 8 years, almost 9 years.
8 years, yeah.
And we're trying not to create too many variables, because if you make a lot of whiskey and it sucks, it can be very expensive. So so
innovation comes at a price, right? Innovation comes at a price, like you're saying, some things don't work, and what are you going to do with it?
Exactly. So you got to be careful. I think we're going to have the luxury of being a little more innovative. This fall we try some new things. Yeah.
So we got here. So this is where your distillery is located. It's actually off to the right here.
That's the main part of the building. It's a 120-year-old textile mill.
Yeah.
That is now repurposed for a lot of different companies, and we're just one of the residents in the building.
Yep. It's so historic, and you got there. You're off to the side off to the right here is like kind of like this little hangar bay, right? And then it goes straight into your distillery. If you guys never been to Bristol to visit the distillery, definitely go check it out. Really great. I mean, Herman, they over there. Oh, we're gonna see some other pictures of the tasting.
Speaking of Bristol, the whole virus thing is kind of throwing us sideways. But even though we do tours and tastings at the distillery on Saturdays, we haven't really done much in terms of a tasting room and things like that. What we decided to do is to use one of our satellite licenses, and we're going to be opening a satellite tasting room on Mill Street in Bristol, down near the waterfront.
Okay.
So it's an area that, if you know Bristol, it's changed a lot in the past several years.
Yeah.
We're right down near the King George and near the new marina on the river. So we're going to be basically a block off the river. So once all this stuff clears, we'll be moving into the tasting room on Mill Street. 131?
Oh, nice. Nice.
So it'll be a place for people to go.
Hang out.
We'll be serving special cocktails there. We'll be doing flights of our whiskey. I'm looking forward to enlightening some of the people out here in Eastern Pennsylvania to some of the good things that our friends at Liberty Pole's making. For example, we could do some rye flights, Pennsylvania rye flights with us and Liberty Pole, for example. Lots of fun things to do.
That's great. That's great. So here's you and John next to your stills.
Yeah, that's our still. It's a 500 gallon or 2,000 liter still that we bought from the company. Carl is the producer in Germany.
Yeah.
They're the same guys who built the still that was at Michigan State.
Yeah.
So that was part of the reason why we bought it. And also in 2009, when we called Vendome, they basically laughed at us. They were like,
"They didn't return your calls, did they?" Oh yeah.
We were like,
Vendome is kicking themselves right now because few distillery out in Chicago, right? Yeah. Paul Haletko.
Right.
And he told me the exact same story when he started out. That he called them, and then they didn't want to take his order.
Oh yeah, it was they were like, "You want to make whiskey in Pennsylvania? What are you, crazy?" They were. I mean, and the Carl stills are fantastic. I mean, they've been making stills for 150 years. They're great quality. We're very pleased with the results we get from it. For sure.
Yeah, that's too bad that we a lot of these craft distillers couldn't buy American-made stills, and that's just a shame.
They thought we were swinging from trees or something, So.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about our still is that it's a hybrid, so that we can run it as a pot and we can run it with a side column. And the side column gives us a little more rectification, so that when we're making the whiskey that going into our 15s, we can clean it up enough so that that's what I was saying before. We use that side column when we're doing making the 15s whiskey, and that gives us the ability to dial in the precise flavor profile we want to go into those smaller barrels. Yeah.
And I believe Wiggle also uses Carl stills. I don't know.
That's correct. Yeah, because they started up right after we did, so they were probably in the same predicament.
Yeah. That's too bad. I want to go over a couple of questions here.
I guess I'll have to put some more whiskey in my glass.
Our friend Joe Pinto says, "Hi Herman, can't wait to be able to visit and share a drink and smoke again. I'm still looking to pick my own barrel." Yep. Joe, right?
Yep.
And then, are there any of those barrels left aging for single barrels? I believe he's talking about the Elmer T. Lee the Buffalo Trace barrels that you were talking about.
There's one.
There's one. Okay, well there you go. Got to jump on that, Joe. Donna, our friend Donna, he says, "My great grandmother was a rock and rye drinker." Rock and rye, so we can talk about rock and rye. That big, deep, long history of rock and rye here. But we're not gonna get into that now. But everybody can look up rock and rye. Charlie just placed 6 bottles ordered from your website just now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, thank you, Charlie Messina. Thank you for supporting.
Thanks very much.
Yep. You know what? Maybe Herman, you can sign those bottles for Charlie. What do you think about that, huh?
What to see? I'm checking the order list right now.
Yeah, Charlie, maybe we can get those bottles signed for you guys. Maybe if Herman, if people are ordering right now and then Herman can do it, everybody gets signed bottles. How about that? That's
Well,
like
there he is, Wellsboro, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, there it is. You can get those bottles. You can sign those maybe. If not, then maybe sign one or send a thank you card.
Yeah, I have the my order line streaming on my desktop. So
okay. And then Raymond saw, so also people in New Jersey, the Dad's Hat is available in Wegmans and Cherry Hill, also all over Jersey. Obviously, if you're in Jersey, you can still get whiskey, normally.
We're in over 20 states. We're basically we're entering New Hampshire now, but we're basically Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, down through DC. We're in Kentucky, we're in Tennessee, we're in Georgia, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, California, Arizona, Nevada, blah blah blah. So we're pretty well represented across the country, and starting right now in Taiwan. We did.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. Which I am in, and I am Taiwan's first fan. I'm going to start the Dad's Hat fan club here,
there we go.
And I am member number 1 here in Taiwan.
Yeah, the shipment arrived last Sunday.
Yeah, it is in Taiwan right now. We have our friend Mr. Yao.
Yep.
Here, also online, which actually he asked a question. He says, quite interesting. Why do you need to clean up the spirit more when you're going into the 15-gallon barrels? What's your reasoning behind that?
Because in the 15s, it's only going to be in the 15-gallon barrel for 9 months to a year.
Yeah.
And in that time, the more complex flavor components, which when young are sometimes not so agreeable.
Haven't matured yet, so you're trying to make a cleaner spirit before, because you're not going to be aging it out as
there
are
two dimensions to the aging process. There is the interaction with the wood, and then there is the intrinsic oxidation and the chemical reactions going on inside the whiskey. Those take a longer time. So if you put some of those funky flavors into the barrel when it's in a small barrel, they're still going to taste rather some of the words that are used, cloying and things, those kind of flavors, they don't go away in 9 months. So you've got to be careful that you don't put too much of that into the barrel, because now a barrel, like 53-gallon barrel that's going to age for 4 years or more, those complex flavors mellow out and turn into really wonderful flavors in 4 years. But in the first 9 months, they're still rather rough.
Yeah, a little rough. So you're cleaning it up because it's you're not expecting it to age as long to round out those rough notes.
Correct.
Okay. Joe says he's sipping on the Punch Brothers single barrel right now. And Charlie says he wants to do a private barrel. So please feel free to reach out to Herman after this. You can find him on Dad's Hat on Facebook website. Herman, you can give your contact information, your email. Do you take?
Yeah, if you go to our website,
just go to the website.
There's a contact page there. It sends an email to info@dadshatrye.com, and that comes right into us. So
okay, Herman, he did say to me, confess that he is pretty low tech.
Right, I'm very low tech. Yeah,
very low tech. So just go to the website, check it out. Betty Kavinik is drinking port finish tonight.
Betty Kavinka.
Joe, Kavinka. Kavinka. Yep. Sorry for mispronouncing. Joseph Pinto says Canals Mount Ephraim also has a single barrel. I'm pretty partial to. So Canals Mount Ephraim still has some of these Dad's Hat barrels.
Oh, really? Okay, that's
single barrels. Are we talking about? All right. Let's finish some of these pictures here.
There's one thing I want to mention too. What on the website for the web store, we have something available there that's not available anywhere else.
Okay, a little exclusive.
It's exclusive, and it's kind of cool because see, one of the strategies that we use is we have, if you remember being to our distillery, we have these big tanks where the barrels are emptied into these big tanks.
Yeah.
Those
Yep.
tanks, our straight whiskey and our classic whiskey tanks, the whiskey goes in, we bottle some of it, but we never empty that tank. So it's kind of like an infinity bottle, you know?
Okay, almost like a Solera system.
Something like that,
yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
So we put that whiskey in, but we're always mixing the last bottling with the new barrels.
Yeah. Okay.
So-
Interesting.
So we always have about 3,000 or more liters of whiskey in those tanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what we've been doing lately is that we have a new label. It's the unfiltered cask strength. So basically, we don't do any filtering whatsoever. We take it right out of that tank, and it's a roughly, last time I measured it was 122.4 or something like that. It's in the low 120s. That whiskey we're putting into, we're bottling it right out of the tank, no filtering, no nothing. And that's available only on our website.
Oh, wow. So that's great. So just, kind of unadulterated cask strength Dad's Hat there.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's unfiltered cask strength. That's available only. It's not available in any stores anywhere. We don't offer it to anybody. It's only available at the distillery or in the website.
Very nice. Very nice. Chuck Zarambo says, hats off from another Bristol Borough business owner. That was from earlier.
Tip of the hat.
Little tip of the hat. Picture of you guys here. This is your bar. This is you right here. You're is this on the farm where you guys getting your rye?
That's the harvester they used up at the Meadowbrook Farms.
Nice. Getting hands on. This is the ferment that's happening right now, right?
That's the fermentation tank. Yep.
Yeah. I love that. I love that color though. It's just like and for me, I can't remember if I mentioned this earlier. For me, the Dad's Hat Rye is really very grain forward. And grain forward, in what I mean by that is you can really taste that fresh kind of grain and rye, the provenance, if you will. Some people debate whether there's terroir in whiskey, like wine, but I don't think, and there's a difference between terroir and provenance, but it's that Pennsylvania rye, and you just there's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing out in the market like Dad's Hat Rye. I can say that without a doubt. This isn't bullet rye, which is great. And it's got so much character. It's just so much flavor, so much character. And it starts right here in this picture during the ferment, and tell us about what's happening here.
Well, the fermentation step obviously creates a lot of the flavors. And the two things that we're very proud of, or we're very conscious of, is number one, we're very fortunate to have the support when we developed our recipe from Michigan State University. We had one of their microbiologists actually work with us to recommend the yeast we're using.
Yeah.
That was tailored to the kind of results we're looking for. Second,
what was that result? What was that result you're looking for?
Well, we wanted to introduce complexity because, with a whiskey that's 80% grain, you don't want it to be a kind of a one-dimensional grain whiskey.
Yeah,
you want it to have different profile, different dimensions to the. So you wanted the fermentation to bring those fruit flavors from the malt that we were looking for. So that was an important part of choosing the yeast. And the second thing is our fermenters. And I know it's a lot. There are some places out there that have, these wonderfully beautiful wooden fermenters, which look very nice, but they're a pain in the ass to operate. Our fermenters are jacketed. We have an automated cooling system, which keeps the temperature profile in the fermentation in a very tight window. We typically keep it within 2 degrees Celsius, and that enables us to get the flavor profile from the fermentation. Because if you let your mash get too hot, you get a lot of these off flavors. We don't want those off flavors because they'll come through the still and you'll taste them down the road. So we keep a very tight window on the fermentation temperature. So that step you're looking at right there contributes so much. And you got to be careful that you're using, number one, good ingredients. Number two, we think the yeast we've chosen lends itself to what we want to do. Number three, process control, slow and slow. We keep the temperature under control. We do a 5-day fermentation.
5-day fermentation.
Yeah, 5 days. And we think that really contributes to, the consistency of the flavor we're getting.
Gotcha. And so, fermentation wise, temperature is really a big factor, right? And then you guys really care about that as well, right?
Oh yeah, like I said, we have an automated temperature control system that at any time the temperature rises above a certain point, the chiller kicks on. We pump chilled water around the jacket of the fermentation tank, and it keeps it under control. Even in the really nasty hot days in the summertime, we're able to keep that fermentation temperature under control.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really kind of one of the key components of having that consistency, right? So if you have these wild, crazy swings in temperature in your fermentation, your whiskey is going to taste it's going to taste different. It's actually just going to taste different. So temperature is very, very a big factor. Yeah. So awesome to hear you say that. The yeast wise, do you care to share kind of like the type or the name of the yeast that you use or anything like that? Or Okay. All right. Okay. Let me just bring this up like this. Oh, now why can't I change this picture now?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Oh, I don't know.
There we go.
I'm gonna have to get that window back up here again because I tried to change it. And so this is kind of how my whiskey was filtered when I picked up barrel, right?
Right.
Just minimum
very, it's a big restaurant spaghetti strainer.
And just look at that. Look how just delicious that looks, right? And you're just and no chill filtering here. You're just trying to catch the big pieces of char, and that's it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. We never do chill filtering, but we do. Yeah. We do a finer filtering for our classic 90 that goes out to the market again because we get some complaints. We still get complaints because we don't chill filter. We get complaints in the wintertime because what happens with whiskey is that it will get cloudy in the wintertime. But that's only because we don't do chill filtering. And we just tell people bring it in the house, let it warm up, give it a shake, and it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. This is the perfect fit.
That's on the back of our bottles if you haven't noticed it before.
Oh, okay. There you go. Okay. And even your bottles are made in Pennsylvania.
That's correct. We had a great partnership with same thing. We were called around at various companies and they would basically hang up on us. And we got a hold of a sales guy at Anchor Hocking based out of Monaca, Pennsylvania. And the guy was great. He was like, look, we understand you're a startup. Let's try to find a way to work together. Yeah. They helped us in the design process. We had a company in Philadelphia called Signature Communications they basically took an old bottle I found from pre-Prohibition, and they took it and sort of tailored it and sharpened it up a little bit. And then the Anchor Hocking people turned it into reality, and they've just been great. I mean, we like the fact that, I mean, it's one of the factors that contributed to us winning a Good Food Award. I don't know if you know what the Good Food Awards are, but Alice Waters she's from Chez Panisse in California. She started a group called the Good Food Awards in California that reward craft producers of many different products and reward them for the quality of their products and also the sustainability of their process. And included in that sustainability is local sourcing, not only of your raw materials, but your packaging materials, et cetera.
Yeah. So I don't have a close up of the bottles, but the bottles themselves are supposed to be shaped like the Keystone,
right?
Like the Keystone State here in Pennsylvania, right? Which is kind of like, again, the focal point of your logo here, which is the Keystone with your dad's hat right there, Pennsylvania rice whiskey, even with the Pennsylvania right there. So very true to the Pennsylvania spirit, and I love it. I love it. Another picture of your still, beautiful, 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 beautiful still. You guys do so. I think I was watching one of your videos or reading somewhere that you guys do like you do 2 batch distillations with your whiskey.
Yeah, we do 2 distillations. The first one is we call stripping, and then we do a second distillation where, again, depending on what we're making, we modify the second. So it's a 2-step distillation process.
And so what's the reason behind that? Because you could just run your column and then just get it to where you want it to be, and and right off get it off the still, because batching it obviously takes more time, and you're doing it again.
With these hybrid stills, I could conceivably run through the column and get a similar result, but after talking to the people at Michigan State and talking to the Carl people, they recommended the stripping and then finishing run combination, because it allows you to be more precise in the finishing run and doing the kind of things that we want to do in terms of, doing some of it, dialing in exactly what we want. So you're able to be more precise in the second distillation. When you run it through one time through, it's a little more difficult to control. But some people do it that way, and there's distillers out there doing it that way, where they run one time through. We just think that we get the result we're looking for this way. So
so you guys, you guys are trying to cut corners. Even though batching it does take a lot more time, this is you guys, that's what you guys do, right? So it's
that's we're at the end of the day, for good or for bad, our objective is to make whiskey that John and I enjoy. Yeah. And hopefully it sells. So.
Gotcha. Beautiful piece there, by the way, with the still. And this is you cleaning it up. So this is what we were talking about, batching it. You got to clean it up, and you got to, do this all over again. And it's a lot of hard work. How long does a run take? When you're doing like one run of whiskey? Stripping takes.
We do 2 batches of stripping per mash batch. That takes basically from 7 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. So it's basically one day. Wow. A finishing run takes a little shorter, and sometimes depending on how frequently we're making mashes. So there are times where we'll do a stripping run until 3, and then we'll do a finishing run after that for like a second shift.
Yeah, and that usually goes until when, like 3 to
7.
3 to 7. Okay.
Yeah, it's a
12-hour day.
But
12 to 13 hours.
It off. Well, somebody comes in early and somebody stays late, kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's not a walk in the park. Being a distiller is not easy. It's not an easy job.
It's not as glamorous as you might think.
No, it's not, right? So it's definitely not as glamorous as some people think. Here's a close up of the still here. Is there anything special about this? Just a close up?
No, it's kind of hard to see it from that angle, because and that's what's becoming an old picture of me. So
yeah, this is a handsome young man right here.
Yeah, that's a few years ago, actually. So
this is the partner, your
that's John,
partner, and business partner and fraternity brother.
Yeah, I've known John since 1975.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And here's a little you at the tasting room over here, right? So you can see
we were filming when we filmed that thing with the Visit Bucks County and the guy from National Geographic. We needed some extras.
Yeah.
And, so we sponsor a local rugby team, Hibernian. So I called the captain. I said, "Hey, if you can get some of your guys down here in another hour, I'll give them free whiskey." And you offer free whiskey to a rugby team, you get plenty of people coming in. So
we can kind of see the distillery, right? So you can obviously catch a glimpse of the column, which is right in the middle here, and you have your holding tanks here.
These are big holding tanks. Yep.
Yeah, your holding tanks. Your fermenter is actually behind.
Yep.
And you can see, next to this bald gentleman right here, you can see a couple of the casks back there. So
yeah.
So the casks are kind of, a few casks are aging essentially right next to the still. Over here in the forefront, we have the tasting room. I think it seats probably about like 15, 20 people, right? I've been there.
We usually try to keep the tours around 15 or so to make it so that everyone has a good time.
Yeah. And here again, it's you in that video, and at the bar. Oh, and that's another picture.
I don't know who that was.
Just friend, yeah. And all right. Well, so I'm gonna go over a couple of these questions, but we usually end around 10:30. And does anybody else have any questions here? I'm trying to read here. So Joseph also asked, are all the 53s currently still the jalapeno rye? If so,
No.
when will that change?
No, that changed in 2014.
Okay, yeah.
And then that was a very short window.
Raymond says, please tell Herman that on my first tasting ever of Dad's Hat was a game changer for me, a big tip of the hat to the brand. So he's trying it for the first time. We have our friend Donna, who just ordered another honey finish rye today.
Cool.
And
Eric, what about your friend from Ireland? Is he still there? Because he asked a question about rye malt versus rye grain.
Yep. Well, he did ask. I think we mentioned. I think we touched on that in terms of the mash bill, and his question was, please ask about the malted and unmalted rye. What percentage and what differences does it bring? I think we touched on that.
Okay.
Yeah, and we asked when we answered Mr. Yao's question about why you do the cuts that way. All right. Well, so that's pretty much about it. Is there anything you want to add, Herman, and then we'll close it out?
Well, like I said, I just appreciate everyone you taking the time, and and so I mean, we like sharing our whiskey, we like sharing our story. I think we pretty much covered all the main things. I mean, we're again, along with a lot of other talented distillers in Pennsylvania, we're really proud to bring back that tradition of Pennsylvania whiskey back to the market, and we happen to think we executed very well. We're really excited about the continued interest, and there's one little interesting little tidbit that I'd like to share with you is that the Old Overholt brand, which started at the Old Overholt Distillery, dates back to 1810. Yeah, and if you find yourself out in Western Pennsylvania, stop by the West Overton Museum. Yeah. That's their turn. The woman who's running that is doing a great job. It's turning into a really interesting place. They're still building it out, but it's really great.
Yeah, and you can still see this old distillery and everything.
Yeah, and one little interesting tidbit there is that the current owner of the Old Overholt brand is Jim Beam. Okay. Yep. Well, Jim Beam is taking an interest in Pennsylvania whiskey. Yeah. And if you take a look at their new label says "Born in Pennsylvania, Made in Kentucky." Yeah. Yeah. So they're kind of throwing a shout out to the history of whiskey making in Pennsylvania, which is I think pretty cool.
I think it's pretty cool. And rumor has it that they're thinking about bringing the production back to Pennsylvania. Apparently.
Well, I think the first. Yeah, we'll see. I mean,
initial talks.
I mean, that's a big step. But frankly, I think it's a great, because if someone like Jim Beam takes the energy, invests the energy into telling people about the history of Pennsylvania whiskey, that does nothing but elevate everybody's boat. I mean, that's a typical rising tide. Helps everybody. Yeah, so exactly. I'm welcome to the party. Tell people the story. We think it's a great story. We think it's a great history, and it's more than history. It's an interesting whiskey, as you pointed out. It's unique. It's not a Kentucky rye. It's not a Canadian rye. MGP rye. Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's a unique profile, and I'm very pleased that we've got people like my good friends at Liberty Pole. I think do a great job down there. Yeah, Liberty Pole. Everybody check out Liberty Pole. I mean, one of the most, I think, really cool, unique ryes out there in Pennsylvania is up at Barrel 21 in State College. Okay. It's a very different. If you want something different, it is the most floral. It's almost like it's
get Rittenhouse back. We'll get Rittenhouse back. Yeah.
It's really amazing. Barrel 21 is a really fun whiskey. So there's some cool things going on out there. You know, the Stone Wolf guys working with Rose and Rye at Penn State. A lot of good stuff.
You know what? You know, and I just want to echo what you're saying. It's just so great. It's just so touching. It's just so uplifting. You know, and as a Pennsylvanian, you know, growing up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Elizabeth town, small town. You know, it's just like. It's something that you can be proud of, you know, Pennsylvania especially, and you know even your friends, you know, they're proud of you for what you're doing. You're making great rye whiskey, and you're giving back to the community. You're giving, you know, using local grains. You're using local glass. You're even I think I saw one of your videos, like the labels you make is also printed.
Oh yeah, we get those are made in Pennsylvania too. We get it. Yeah. The only thing that's not local is the corks. The corks come from Portugal.
Okay, the corks. Well, we'll give you a pass on that. We'll give you a pass on that one. And just you know, just a great story. And you know, you're from Western PA and have this, you know, really rich history tied to the rye whiskey business and your own family, and you're preaching this this culture and about rye whiskey, American Pennsylvania rye whiskey, and you're using a great, just very unique recipe of, you know, 100% rye. 80% rye, 15% malt, 5% malted rye, and what I meant was no corn,
right?
Just rye and malt. And creating such a great profile, very, very in-depth, very, very deep, very rich flavors. And, you know, we have new friends joining us, buying the whiskey, and you guys are going to enjoy it just as much as, hopefully just as much as I do and Herman does. Yeah, Paul Braun also just ordered a couple bottles, you know, and everybody says thank you. Thank you, Herman, for your time. Always a pleasure. I look forward to heading to the distillery once again. I wanted to just volunteer and maybe help you guys bottle some stuff and like move some casks around, you know.
Well, yeah,
when everything's settled down, you know.
When the dust clears here, you know. Right now it's not a great time, but we come in. Actually, I think you'd enjoy coming in for a finishing run. Have you come in and see how we taste the cuts and how we run the still to pull those cuts the way we want them. And I think you might find that pretty interesting.
That'd definitely be very cool. And everybody everybody go check out the website. Reach out to them. You know, somebody said you guys want to get a cask, you know, you can go in there, you can taste the whiskey straight from the casks, and you can buy the cask right there and they'll bottle it for you. Right. And they give you the cask. And you guys give us the cask, right? Yeah. And you get the cask and you get a little memento there. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Herman. We'll be in touch. Herman's still up and running during these times, you know, and help support your local craft distillers. And we'll see you guys soon again. And if you guys are watching me on Facebook or YouTube, please like or subscribe. And then I do these videos once a week with different craft distillers. Actually, I wanted to get maybe Jim and them from the Liberty Pole guys, and I can do one of these with them too. You know,
absolutely.
And,
Good folks.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody, guys. Thanks everybody.
See you guys. Thanks, Alex.
One of these.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Cheers.
Cheers, and long live Pennsylvania rye whiskey.
Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.
Good night.